Ever notice how the universe has a strange way of settling its own scores? Those who throw thorns in your path often end up bleeding on the same road they paved. That's not coincidence. That's cosmic balance, undeniable, unforgiving, and perfectly timed. For every trap they set, a door opened for you. For every rumor they whispered, a spotlight found you. Life doesn't need your permission to balance the scales. It just does. See, the ones who mocked you thought they were spectators. What they didn't realize is they were part of the performance. You were the storm they couldn't see coming, and now they're caught in the flood. Ironically, their obsession became your advertisement. While they tried to bury you, the universe quietly planted you. And now you're rising like roots through concrete, shattering every illusion they built. Let this be your reminder. When you're chosen, you don't have to chase revenge. You become it. Your progress haunts them. Your silence exposes them. Your elevation, its poetic justice, served not loud, but lethal. They laughed at you like the thunder, but forgot. Thunder always follows lightning. If this already hit something inside you, don't scroll past like it's just another video. Subscribe now, like this message, and lock in, because what's coming next isn't motivation, it's confirmation. The kind that leaves your enemies in silence and your destiny wide open. Welcome to the frequency where karmic correction begins, and you're the headline. Before we get into the part that's making your enemies whisper your name with a mix of fear and respect, do this. Hit that like button to fuel the momentum. Subscribe so you stay 10 steps ahead with every drop, and comment, "I see it now," if you've ever felt the shift, when silence turned into power. This isn't just a video. It's a mirror showing you who you've always been. The moment you keep watching, you're claiming it. And trust me, by the time this ends, you'll understand why they say, "Don't mess with that one." Number 1. Stop dimming your light. They fear you because your genius was never taught, only remembered. They used to laugh behind your back. Now they lower their voices when your name comes up. Because here's what no one expected. Your intelligence didn't come with a label, a mentor, or a degree. It came with force. And it came early. You weren't trained for this. You were wired for it. See, most people only recognize intelligence when it's wearing a suit or speaking in citations. But you didn't follow the blueprint. You are the blueprint. And that unsettles people deeply. Because while they were memorizing data, you were decoding people. While they were reciting theories, you were predicting outcomes. And you didn't need a classroom to do it. You just knew. Not because you studied harder, but because you process reality like a strategist, not a student. You didn't need the system's approval to validate your mind. In fact, the system was designed to overlook minds like yours, silent, deep, non-linear, and dangerous. But it failed. You slipped through the cracks, sharpened in silence. And now, you've become their blind spot's worst nightmare. They can't understand how someone like you, who didn't play the game, ended up outmaneuvering them in it. They expected you to be behind, but what they didn't know is that while they were racing, you were building your own path. You weren't late, you were loaded. Now your intelligence shows up not as trivia or flex, but as precision. You don't just talk, you dismantle narratives. You don't just learn, you absorb. You don't just solve problems, you see them before they even form. And that's what terrifies people who once thought you were just quiet, slow, soft-spoken, or passive. Turns out your silence was a setup, because when you speak, it doesn't sound like you're quoting someone smarter. It sounds like you are the reference, like your insight isn't coming from effort, but from depth, somewhere unteachable, untraceable, and uncontrollable. That's not just intelligence, that's dangerous clarity, and they feel it. Now the whispers have changed. They don't call you sensitive, naive, or quiet anymore. Now it's, "That one's smart," like scary smart. Be careful. Because they don't know how to handle a mind that isn't just intelligent, It's pattern breaking. You're not a product of their grooming. You're a glitch in their algorithm, a mind that can't be replicated, predicted, or boxed. You're the reason the room shifts when you enter, the reason the conversation feels heavier when you speak, and the reason fake confidence shatters in your presence. They thought they were underestimating you, but really, they were miscalculating the cost of sleeping on someone with rare perception. You didn't just outthink them, you outgrew them, quietly, swiftly, completely. And now, you're the warning label no one saw coming. Number 2. Don't fall for the act. Outsmarting manipulators starts with not reacting. They used to run circles around people like it was sport. Manipulators, energy leeches, masters of the guilt trip and the silent jab. But now they've hit a wall. You. See, chosen ones don't fight with chaos. We starve it. And nothing frustrates a manipulator more than your refusal to react. Because reaction is their oxygen. They bait you with fake smiles, say things that are meant to provoke, play the victim when they're the villain, and when it doesn't work on you, they panic. You've reached the level where you don't argue. You analyze, you don't clap back, you calculate, and it drives them insane. While they're throwing emotional tantrums dressed as conversations, you're reading their tactics like subtitles. The passive-aggressive digs, caught. The guilt-loaded jokes, clocked. The sudden mood shifts to make you question yourself. You've seen the blueprint, and it's outdated. The old version of you might have bent over backward to keep the peace, to not offend, to explain yourself. But this version, you let the silence speak. You let your lack of response become the loudest message in the room. That's what's changed. You're not harder, you're sharper. You don't match energy anymore. You master it. And now, the same people who once tried to pull your strings are telling others, watch out. That one sees through everything. Not because you exposed them publicly, but because you stopped playing the part they cast you in. You've outgrown their game, and now they know you don't react to manipulation. You end it with intelligence. Number 3. Never flex what they'll eventually fear. Power moves best in silence. You never had to announce it. That's what unsettles them. While others were screaming for attention, you were mastering your mind in silence. That's what makes you dangerous. Not just intelligent, but unpredictable. You don't flex, but your presence does. You don't brag, but your decisions expose everything fake in the room. They thought you were behind simply because you weren't loud, but they didn't realize silence was your weapon. While they were performing, you were plotting. While they tried to dominate the spotlight, you were already 10 steps ahead, working in the shadows, building something they'll only understand once it's too late to stop it. See, when you're truly chosen, you don't chase validation. You let the results speak, and they do, louder than any ego ever could. That's why the gossip has changed. You used to be the quiet one. Now you're the one they study, the one they whisper about, the one they warn others not to cross. Your power doesn't live in noise. It lives in precision, strategy, timing. That's why your moves hit harder, because no one sees them coming until it's already too late. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to move. And when you do, the ripple effect is undeniable. So let them underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them assume they're winning while you stay still. Because the silence they mock today, it's the storm they won't survive tomorrow. They're not afraid because you made noise. Number 4. Ditch the degrees. Real discernment was never earned, it was born. Forget the degrees, forget the titles. Real discernment doesn't come with a framed certificate. It comes from surviving rooms where silence was louder than applause and truth was hiding in plain sight. See, your intelligence isn't dressed in formality, it walks in raw clarity. While others were taught what to think, you mastered how to see. Not just what's said, but what's behind it. Not just the behavior, but the motive behind the mask. They used to brag about their institutions. You walked in with no academic armor, and still the room shifted. Not because you had more knowledge, but because you had deeper vision. The kind of insight you can't fake, borrow, or Google. You read tension like textbooks. You decode energy like equations. And you do it all without breaking a sweat. That's what's got them shook. Because now the whispers aren't about your resume. They're about your results. People can't explain how you called it before it happened, or how you read someone without needing their backstory. They say things like, "Be careful. That one sees everything." And they're right. Your awareness isn't decorated. It's dangerous. You don't just know, you understand. You don't guess, you sense. That's not learned behavior. That's born instinct. So while they flaunt credentials and degrees, you walk in unannounced and leave their illusions dismantled. You weren't validated by the system. You were missed by it, and now they realize the most intelligent person in the room might be the one who never needed a podium to prove it. Number 5. Don't blend in. Your presence alone exposes every broken system. You don't have to speak to cause disruption. Just being in the room shifts the energy, and that's the part they can't stand. You're not loud, but you're undeniable. You don't blend in because you weren't built to. You're a living contradiction to everything fake people use to survive. They wear masks, you wear truth. In families, you expose the favoritism no one wants to talk about. In workspaces, your energy disrupts fake authority. In social circles, you break unspoken rules without even trying, because you're not here to play along. Your presence reminds people of everything they've been avoiding, hiding, or pretending not to feel, and that makes them uncomfortable. You're not aggressive, you're just free. And in a world addicted to control, freedom is threatening. People spent years building illusions to keep others in check. Titles, traditions, fake smiles, silent expectations. Then you showed up and made all of it crack without raising your voice. They hate that you don't flinch, that you don't laugh when the joke's not funny, that you don't follow the script. Your boundaries feel like rebellion. Your questions feel like rebellion. Even your silence feels like rebellion. But here's the truth. You're not rebellious. You're aligned. And alignment exposes everything that isn't. That's why they gossip. That's why they warn others in hushed tones. Not because you did anything, but because just being real around you feels like exposure. You don't need to fight the system. You reveal it, effortlessly. They can't lie when you're present. They can't pretend when you're watching, because your presence alone carries a message. This game is over, and I'm not here to play. Number 6. Play slow to win fast. Let the fake smart ones reveal themselves first. Let them underestimate you. That's the setup. You've mastered the art of playing slow, not because you're behind, but because you're observing the ones who rush to prove what they don't truly have. See, fake intelligence needs an audience. It needs applause. But your kind of intelligence, it doesn't perform. It studies. It waits. And then it strikes. You've learned something most people never figure out. When you're truly sharp, you don't need to show it. In fact, the smartest move you ever made was letting people think they were outsmarting you. That's when they exposed themselves. The moment they thought you weren't a threat, they dropped the act. And that's exactly when you started taking notes. You let them speak first. You let them perform. You let them trip over their own ego while you stayed silent, still unreadable. Because silence is your weapon, and patience, that's your trap. Now they're whispering your name with caution, because they've realized the one they assumed was slow was really 10 moves deep in the game, just waiting for the perfect moment to flip the entire board. You didn't win by shouting, you won by outlasting, outsmarting, outsensing. They exposed themselves, you just stayed quiet long enough for their mask to crack. That's why the gossip has changed. You're no longer just observing, you're the one to watch. And the smart ones, they now know You were never slow. You were strategic. Number 7. Logic won't save you. Spiritual alignment is the real weapon. They thought it was all about logic, formulas, data, arguments, that if they collected enough proof, they could trap you in a corner of silence. But here's what shook them. You weren't playing on that level at all. You don't just think through situations, you feel through them. You sense shifts before words are spoken. You move off alignment, not approval. While others are stuck calculating the surface, you're already synced with what's underneath it. Your clarity doesn't come from statistics. It comes from precision rooted in awareness. You can feel when something's off, even if it looks perfect on paper. That throws people off, because they can't measure what you operate from. It's not mechanical, it's magnetic. It's the way your instincts call it before the facts even arrive. It's the way your gut shuts down what someone spent hours trying to fake. And when you speak, it lands, not because you shout, not because you quote, but because your words resonate. They carry depth, they vibrate with truth, and it unnerves those who live behind performance. That's why the gossip's changed. It's not just that you're intelligent, it's that you're intuitively untouchable. You don't move like you're guessing. You move like you already know, and that kind of insight can't be learned, only aligned with. Your mind is sharp, but your awareness, that's what makes you lethal. They brought spreadsheets, you brought signals. They wanted proof, you brought presence, and now they understand. Logic can be challenged, but alignment, that's a force no one can predict, manipulate, or outmaneuver. And that's why they whisper now, don't mess with that one. They see things before they happen. More coming. Drop the next one when ready. Number 8. Silence the false experts. One truth spoken calmly dismantles a lifetime of deception. They built entire identities around sounding right. Polished words, big titles, inflated egos. These so-called experts walked into rooms expecting applause, never questions. For years they thrived in circles that celebrated noise over depth. Until you arrived, quiet, calculated, untouchable. See, you didn't challenge them with arguments. You didn't need a mic or a crowd. You challenged them with something far more dangerous, clarity. One calm truth from you had the power to unravel the stories they rehearsed their whole lives. No drama, no shouting, just undeniable precision that exposed the cracks they tried to paint over. And when that moment came, the silence was loud. Their authority, fragile. Their image, shaken. Because the room finally saw what you already knew. They were performing. You were real. This is why you're being whispered about now, not because you embarrassed anyone, but because your existence makes people rethink everything they believed about intelligence, power, and credibility. You don't compete. You correct without trying. You speak, and suddenly the fog clears. People remember your words, not because you shouted, but because truth, when spoken by someone chosen, lands like a strike, not a suggestion. You made their smartest person look shaky without even raising your voice. And that's why they warn others. Don't debate that one. Don't test them. They see too much. Because your intelligence doesn't need a stage. It is the storm that ends the performance. And now, the room doesn't clap for the loudest anymore. It watches the quiet one, you. Number 9. Don't just think, feel everything they're hiding between the lines. They thought intelligence was about speaking the most or quoting the loudest. But you read energy like it's written in bold print. While others hang on to facts and figures, you navigate through vibrations. You don't just process conversations, you decode intent. You're not the loudest in the room, but you're the one who actually hears what's not being said. The fake smile, the forced compliment, the sudden pause when truth tries to surface. You pick it all up, not by logic alone, but by alignment. And that's what has them shaken, because you see them before they perform. You know the play before they act it out. This is what sets you apart. You don't need someone to confess. Their energy spills everything. And the worst part for them, you don't even react. You just know and move accordingly. That's the kind of power that can't be staged or faked. It unnerves people who rely on image, ego, and illusion. Around you, their mask feels too heavy. They label you too sensitive, but really, they mean too accurate. Because every time they try to cloak their intentions, your presence unwraps it. Quietly, effortlessly. That's why they don't cross certain lines with you anymore. They've learned that pretending around you is like stepping into a trap they built themselves. You don't just think, you feel with precision. And that kind of perception, it's dangerous in all the right ways. Number 10. Say less, free more. Break their mental chains without ever raising your voice. They expected confrontation. What they got was revelation. Because when you speak, rarely, calmly, and with surgical precision, it cuts deeper than any shouted truth ever could. You don't need volume to make an impact. You don't need a crowd to start a shift. You say less, and somehow, you free more. That's the danger in your presence. You're not here to argue or convince. You're here to reflect. And when you do, people start hearing their own thoughts louder than yours. The lies they've lived by start trembling. The mental cages they've normalized begin to crack, not because you forced them open, but because your clarity made them impossible to ignore. You've become the kind of person who can walk into a room and rearrange minds just by asking the right question, or sometimes by not saying anything at all. That kind of quiet power, it's rare, and it's terrifying to those who need chaos to stay in control. Your enemies hate it because they can't pin it down. They can't provoke you into an outburst. They can't label you as emotional or unstable. So instead, they whisper warnings. They say you're cold or intense or too much, when the truth is, you're just too real for their illusions to survive. You don't force transformation, you trigger it. And once someone hears truth in your presence, they can't unhear it. You didn't come to fix anyone. But somehow, your insight unhooks them anyway, quietly, powerfully, permanently. Number 11. Catch the lie midair. No confrontation needed when you see the shift before the sentence ends. They hate how fast you catch on. You don't need a dramatic reveal or a drawn-out explanation. One glance, one stutter, one shift in their energy, and you already know. You've developed a gift that most people fear. The ability to recognize deception before the sentence even finishes. You don't interrupt. You don't need to. You let the words fall out while your mind slices through them like a blade. By the time they're done lying, you've already traced the motive, tracked the inconsistency, and filed the entire performance away like evidence. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't confront, you clock, quietly, sharply, permanently. And when the time is right, you make a move so precise, it unravels the entire setup without ever raising your voice. People get nervous around you because their usual masks don't work. Their tone betrays them, their timing is off, their words land too sweet or too perfect, and you feel it. They forget that your intelligence doesn't rely on what's said. It lives in what's unsaid. You're not impressed by performances. You study them. You read the tension behind the smile, the forced calm in their tone, the detail they conveniently skipped. You catch deception in real time, and that's why they whisper about you. They say, "Be careful what you say around that one." They'll know, and they're right, because you're not just smart, you're surgical, and they can't lie to someone who sees straight through the disguise. Number 12. Don't be impressed. Intelligence without integrity is just dressed up manipulation. Let's get one thing straight. Not everyone who sounds smart is dangerous, but the ones who weaponize intelligence without conscience, that's a walking trap. See, chosen ones like you don't just have intellect, you have alignment. You don't just think sharply, you move correctly, and that's exactly why you're shaking rooms. Because in a world where manipulation is masked as leadership and ego is mistaken for authority, your presence exposes the fraud. You've probably already seen it. The ones with big words but no backbone. The ones who argue well but live poorly. They quote logic, twist emotion, and win debates, not to enlighten, but to dominate. That's not wisdom. That's polished deception. But here's what's really burning them. You're smarter and cleaner. You read energy, not just faces. You lead with vision, not volume. You can't be lured in with flattery or confused by jargon, because your power doesn't come from what you know. It comes from what you live. You're not here to impress. You're here to awaken. And when you show up, the mask slips. Suddenly, people start questioning the ones they once praised. Suddenly, truth starts weighing more than performance. This is why the gossip has changed. You're not just intelligent, you're a problem, because you make the clever manipulators look exposed and outclassed. They had the crowd, the words, the image, but you had the truth, and that always wins. Now that the masks have cracked and the whispers have turned into warnings, remember this. Being highly intelligent is one thing. Being unshakable while carrying that intelligence is what makes you untouchable. Chosen one, your presence rewrites the room. You don't chase validation, you reveal truth. And that truth, it makes the wrong ones nervous for all the right reasons. If this message struck something real in you, don't scroll past it. Like this video, subscribe to stay tapped into this frequency, and drop a comment below with "I see it clearly now." Let the world know they were right not to mess with you.